And then somebody sent me a book for the concept of purpose.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, I wonder what they would say that I don't know. So I'm going to, before I read that book, I thought it'd be good for us to share today our thoughts on purpose.
Yeah.
And what that looks like. I'm a spiritual chiropractor.
My friends call me the real life care bear.
Talk it out. Welcome to the podcast. For those of you who have not been here before, welcome to Black Sheep Thinking's podcast. Today we'll be discussing purpose. I'm Morgan Pierce, and this is
Andrew Potvin.
And we are two life coaches that help people radically accept their happiness by removing harmful beliefs in the brain.
Yes. Yeah.
And live
in the brain.
Their heart juice. From the truth of who they are. Anyways. Stupid beginning. Purpose. It came up. I made a post on Instagram last night.
Yeah, I was
going to sit back into this and relax, actually.
It was good because
we
are
intense right into the camera. Going back into
yeah. I pulled the line out of that because, and then I saw you repost it on Instagram and somebody else took it. It was like, success is the journey.
Yeah. Someone stole that?
Somebody else. Somebody else. Because I mentioned it on TikTok and you were like, oh, yeah, good notice on the quote. And then somebody else nailed it as well. So I'm glad that I'm not the only one who heard that.
And then somebody sent me a book for the concept of purpose.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, I wonder what they would say that I don't know. So I'm going to, before I read that book, I thought it'd be good for us to share today our thoughts on purpose.
Yeah.
And what that looks like. I want to kind of sit like we're having a conversation with everybody. Like, yeah, this feels better. Hi, studio audience.
Hello, studio.
Thoughts on purpose. So Nietzsche said, life has no meaning except
the meaning you give it.
And so it kind of sits in that area, but people are constantly trying to look for what they're supposed to be doing with their lives.
Yeah. I did. Yeah.
I mean, I think I have a number of thoughts on it. We've never really talked about purpose before, which is weird. I don't think we've ever.
That's because it's not something we really focus on that much.
It's true.
Because it's like your purpose is whatever you want to create.
Yeah. So people say, well, that's because you found your purpose, Andrew.
Yeah. That would be it. No. Yeah. I guess.
You know why it's easy for you to be so happy? Because you are happy. So before I actually, my story, well, let's do what we always do. Let's share our understanding. So you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
You look like
I kind of had a thing. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, partner. And so I remember I heard Tony Robbins say the world will pay any price you ask.
Mm-hmm.
And if you search that, he talks about a whole story about giving a man a quarter and why he was successful. And I kind of took that to heart. And I remember coming out of school, I was like, I just want to have an office and I want to dress up every day and I want to help people. And I did. And I'm working in Employment Ontario. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I have an office with my name on it eventually. And it took a few months, two contracts, let's say a couple of contracts, 6-month intervals. And to work my way up to employment counselor. And then I was dressing up like Jim from The Office every day. And then I was helping people find jobs. But I wasn't making any money. And I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot to ask for money. I got to make a living. I couldn't pay back my student loans. So I asked for that. And what happened? I ended up shifting. I remember there was a mirror. It said, can you use a mirror that they made at the company? I walked out. It was in Trenton. I think it was called Courage.
Yeah.
And I walked out and they had done this window, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Display. And it said, can you picture yourself in a new career? And it was a mirror. I remember looking in the mirror at myself, and then I took I think I have that picture somewhere in a hard drive or OneDrive, and I was like, yes. And then that was it. That was like the moment I decided
that you decided
look for something else and leave that, and then so stumbled upon finance. It was a family, my aunt has been in it, and then I did that for a while, but I never thought it wasn't about as much as using my purpose, I think.
Yeah.
And this is where the exercise came in that we've used for clients is like, skills are transferable, but so is happiness. I think discovering your purpose, it's better to do two things, or at least in the concept of purpose. One is knowing that everything is a purpose.
Yep.
Two, your purpose is really less of a purpose and more about like what makes you happy. What do you enjoy doing and what makes it like what you enjoy doing and what you feel
And that it's okay for that to change over time, I think, too, is an important thing, right? Because that's kind of what I think you're touching on, which was like
your happiest is a barometer.
Yeah, it was a similar situation for me because because I got into the law of attraction and like manifesting, and I would like lay in bed and like manifestations. I would lay in bed and manifest.
Would your mom catch you and then you'd be embarrassed? Mom, I swear I wasn't manifesting, I swear. It's just itching.
It's not what you think it is.
It's just itching the problem. Okay, yeah.
And I would like visualize myself with like a construction business. I'd be running a construction business and sending guys out to job sites and same idea. Like I got there and and a similar situation. I was like, oh, my family life was starting to fall apart because it was like that was my purpose, and I'm like I wasn't focusing on other things in my life.
Right.
And I think it's more just like I got there and that was great, and I accomplished the things I said I wanted to do, but realizing it wasn't just about that; it was who I was becoming in that process.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was similar to my journey too.
Yeah,
where it's like I have everything but nothing. Yeah. So that's
because you start to get all that when you accumulate all the stuff on the outside that you're like, oh, this is my purpose.
I need a purpose-driven life. You hear people say I need a purpose-driven.
Yeah,
which I don't like on that topic. We're going to be all over the place on this, but
it sounds like it. Yeah,
but when people say I use my pain to create my purpose.
Turn your pain into purpose. Yeah. That's a belief system.
Yeah, and all they do is attach to their pain as their identity for the whole ride, which is because they're like, but I'm making a difference. I'm like, well, we share our pain. We're sharing it right now. Sharing the same, but we're not. It's not our purpose. I wouldn't call it my purpose. I'm not saving. That's very white knight syndrome to be like, because I suffer. I think
that's my choice.
I think your pain can be an opportunity to help the people around you for sure, but not make it your mission. And your identity, and it's just part of the understanding that you're taking. It's like experience. It'd be like if your first job sucked, and you use that as like the reason why you're like,
that was. Well, and you see, but I think you see people do that too, right? With like relationships, where if their first relationship, I did it for a while in relationships, right? Where my marriage failed, and I used that as like the catapult to like, I'm never going to be like I was in that relationship, but I'm going to protect myself now, and I'm going to change the way I do things, and I'm going to show up. And
that happened in parenting. Yeah, you're right. The pendulum
do the exact opposite of what my parents did, and exactly. People use that because it becomes their identity, right?
Yes.
And that's exactly it. It's that story of like, I gotta change everything.
That's why we have a hard time with goals, because like people say, well, everything's a goal. Or if you have like, if you want to go to the store, that's a goal to the store. So you have to have goals. And I was like, so I had to soften on that a bit, because I don't mind goals now. I mean, I try to stay away from that word and use aspirations, because usually goals, there's an attachment. And if people have a purpose as part of their attachment, they're missing on the opportunity to become what they need to be and create whatever they want. Because they're so vision oriented on what's my purpose? What do you want?
What do you want it to be?
Anything. Anything. But I don't know. Then do something. And see how it feels. And see if it has meaning for your life, if you want to keep or accept it. And then, create it from there, go from there. There's no wrong answer. I remember when I was working in Employment Ontario, someone said, someone came in and I had to ask them all these interview questions. And I was young, I was in my mid-20s. And I was like, okay, what's your name? What's your date of birth? And because we're trying to job place them. And I'd be like, do you smoke weed or do you drugs? They're like, no. I'm like, do you smoke weed? They'd be like, this wasn't legal then. I'm like, I'm not going to call the cops. I just need to know. I'm not putting you on a construction site, on a skyscraper if you're stoned.
If you're stoned,
it's not a good spot for you. And so then I would get to the spot. I asked this, what are your hobbies and all that? And the guy was a young guy. He was right out of college, like 23. He was like, nothing. And I thought to my head, like, wow, like loser. It's like a judgment. But then he spoke up and he was like, I don't really try to have hobbies. I'm young. I try to treat life like a buffet, and I try to I try to sample a little bit of everything. And I was like, this guy's not a loser. That's brilliant. And so, I helped him find a job. And he was the guy that when he came back, he's like, hey, I did everything you said, and I started making twice as much as you with my first job. I'm like, what am I doing here?
I need to listen to what I say.
That's a thing.
That's insight.
That's insight to people out there.
For sure.
How many times are you giving people great advice
and not taking it?
Yeah, you got to listen to your own words. It's not about being a hypocrite or not. It's just we love people often more than we love ourselves. But we're getting. I mean, that's a sidetrack. But
that is a sidetrack for sure. That could be a whole other podcast.
To be continued. But back to purpose. Yeah, I never really thought. I think I feel like I'm living a purpose, but not, I don't know if it's like the purpose. Like I'm always said to you, if coaching didn't work out, or I wanted to, if I won the lottery, I want to do it for free, or I would just do it bigger and more, something crazier. But we definitely want to tour. That would be a fun thing
for sure.
To tour,
for sure, to
go to high
take it on the road and be able to
share with younger people.
Yeah,
and so, but I mean, I don't think I have a target that way that's important.
Yeah.
Like I remember when did we tell the story already when I was podcasting? He's like, what's the most important? I remember telling the story this week. I can't remember he's like, what's the dream? What's the vision? Did I tell you that story on this podcast?
Not on the podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So, because this is really, it was a really big deal. I remember I got a book from a friend early on when I was just starting Black Sheep Thinking. I got a book. It was an exercise workbook, and it was like, who do the people? This is even before we met, I think.
Yeah.
It was like, who are your role models, and who are your, what are the quotes you live by, and what are your values, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and you kept just every page would sharpen it, and at the end you'd have like a mission statement and a vision and a goal.
Yeah.
That was like your business. And I remember it was like, I think that's where I came up with like witness happiness. And but then I remember my goal was like a certain amount of 6-figure income on stage with Tony Robbins. And
I remember doing stuff like that.
Yeah. And then not long in, I remember, when we had the website up and stuff. It was kind of the rebranding moment. And Katie called me, a friend of mine, Katie. She was like, "Hey, congratulations, Morgan," whatever. And I was like, "Oh no, we still have this and this, like all these things." And she said, "No, Morgan, you're in it. You're in it."
Yeah.
And that, not just that moment, I remember calling her because it was like a year later where she opened up her business, and I called and said the same. She said the same thing. We still have this and this. So I was like, "You're in it." I get to say it back to you. A reminder of that conversation, how important it was. But over that time of that conversation, you're in it. And then the story from, I think, Courage to be Disliked, about climbing the mountain, and if you die halfway through,
does that mean you failed? Yeah, you did tell that. You did tell that one. Yeah.
Well, I won't tell. I'll let them read it. I mean, it's a good book. Courage to be Disliked. People should read it. But I mean, that's just that concept. If you say a mistake, a claim that's on the mountain, you die halfway. Did you fail, or did you not reach your goal? And within those two concepts, I remember I was on this podcast, and the guy was a small podcast. And the guy said, open the first question. Just after I had this realization, he goes, "What's the goal, Morgan? What's the dream? Which is like, what's the purpose?" And I was like, yes. I was like, being on your podcast. And he was like, "That's ha ha ha." But I explained, like, just not long ago, like maybe even a week before, I come to this understanding that beforehand, the reason I shared this on my own Zoom call was like, beforehand, I had a dream of numbers and the outcomes and all this stuff outside, but none of that was where I was doing what I loved. It was always in the moment. So if it's like right now we are living our dream, our purpose, or whatever you want to say, because we're doing what we love right now. Yeah. And I was doing it back then on the podcast.
And that's where I would say it's more about choice than it is about purpose, right? You get to choose what you focus on, what you put, and the choice, the reason we've made this choice is because we saw the difference it made in our lives.
Yeah.
We're seeing the difference it's making in others people's lives, and we want to share more of that, right? And so it's just a choice to say, like, okay, let's put our egos aside and just, instead of battling, everybody says, "Oh, you got to do a podcast, you got to do a podcast," and we were like, "No, we're not doing that. That's silly."
Yeah.
And now that we're doing it, it's like, because we chose to do, we chose this.
Yeah, it was just the right time. It was the right time. And actually, I just want to go back to it, because if you want to figure out your purpose, I would say, look at what you're great at, look what you love doing, and look at your emotions. Like we had that exercise where we had people go look at the moments in their life where they felt joy or happiness, write a list of the top 10 moments you feel joy or happiness, and then take a look at those moments and ask yourself, why did you feel happy? Not everyone feels happy doing the same thing. Not everyone should be the same job. So your purpose isn't as much as some big But it's weird because when I look at that, all my emotions for the most part were satiated within my work or outside, because there's some that you'll do as a hobby or with friends and family. Because some people like freedom, but they like control. Then they have to travel, but they maybe need a more structured work environment, or vice versa. And so, it's just really about, for me, I always had the things that made me feel fulfilled, because there's different. We shouldn't say happy. I wish we could change that, because happiness is in this chair and it's sitting in that chair, and it could be sitting in that chair, because happiness is really no need for anything. It's just being.
Fulfillment is more of what you're pointing to at that.
Putting it in action. Put happiness in action.
Yeah.
And so if you were to look at the things that are actionable that made you feel the feeling you want, what those things are transferable in jobs, just like job skills. And so that isn't so much about your purpose, but it's just about, like, how hard is it to do what you love? Take a second to answer that. How hard is it to do the work and the things if you love it? Not hard at all.
Not hard at all.
Not hard at all.
Not hard at all.
And so that's really, the old quote of, if you find something you love to do or something, you won't work a single day in your life, whatever the quote is. And so that's, for me, I think the only purpose of life is to experience being alive.
That's exactly, if you're looking for purpose, the purpose is enjoy this experience while you're here.
Yeah,
that's what
find
the purpose
fulfillment
is.
in the things you do. Well, that was a short podcast.
Cut. One of the other things that came up for me, actually, and that was because I've heard this before from people, is like, well, it's God's plan. What's God's plan? What's God's plan? And it's like, it puts it out there like, oh, I have no control over what happens in my life. I have no control over what I do with my life. I'll just let God decide for me, as if he's like a puppeteer up there, just like,
which makes no sense. Because if they believe in God, then they believe in free will. Yeah. And there would be no plan, because free will is chaos.
Yeah.
I think it's very much like we live our lives. I think probably, God knows something, if there was an almighty deity of that concept that you believe in. And just like us, we know ourselves. We can influence what's around us, but we don't control very much beyond what's an arm's length. So, I don't know. But it's really hard, because it's kind of like hindsight. Everyone's like, "Oh man, because my life happened this way, there must have been a plan." I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool." I mean. Your story, and that's why people fall in love with their story. They start to look back and go, "Oh," and then they worry about the future, because this needs a good ending. This needs a good ending, man. I can't.
That's what a lot of pressure, right? To create purpose. Like, all this had to happen for a reason, and if I don't accomplish the things I want to accomplish, then I've wasted all this stuff in the past, and that's where we see people get caught up in that story of, like, trying to create something so elaborate and huge and worthy of.
It might be kind of nihilist, but I just don't like, obviously we believe in that we are energetic spiritual beings, but I don't care really to talk much about what's next or what's before, because none of that matters. It's just what is.
None of it's right now. None of it's now.
Yeah, this is where my life be. And that was what that post was about. I think people missed the point. It was like, I talked about helping one client at a time and being in the moment and being not worrying about it. I want people, and I said that's how we work. It was like one thing at a time, because if we start to get to whenever we start to vision too far with the business, that creates anxiety and stress and pressure and identity
and a belief to, like, create a purpose. So I guess really it was, if it's about presence, then that is the purpose. Is to be present. That's the purpose of life, right? Is to just be present.
Experience what's going on right now. Like, there's no future. There's no past. Those are concepts.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that they weren't real. The past wasn't real, but it's really the past. Like Alan Watts says, we're living the present and throwing it behind us. And as we're looking forward, I always say my toes are pointed in the direction I want to go. But purpose. My purpose, I guess, in life is to leave it better than I found it.
Yeah.
Experience life to the fullest. Try to progress as a human but I don't try to progress. So when I say try to progress, I was going to put a caveat to say try to progress without effort.
Yeah.
Just be, like, to live.
Well, I just know that progress naturally happens. I like, the one thing that you really taught me well was about, it's setting intention on what you want to do. and then live in the present, knowing that that's your intention, right?
You are your intent.
You are your.
It's that saying. You are your intent. Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like even just for things like, well, when you started teaching me magic, right? It was like, here are the things that I want to learn. I knew the couple tricks that I wanted to learn right away, and I knew the moves that were required to learn that.
There's moves. It's real magic, bro.
I knew what was required to learn that trick, and
like you
then I
call
was
them
just
moves.
focus on that moves. Yeah, my night moves.
We call them slights in the business.
Slights,
like an insult. No, yeah, it's true, man.
If there's any magicians watching, I did not mean any insult by that means.
He doesn't know, man.
I'm a rookie.
Kick him out of the nerd group.
I'm a rookie.
Oh no, there's going to be one more free space in the nerd group. Now there's 8 billion spaces. Yeah, that's all of the podcast magic circle. So purpose.
Yeah.
So I guess let's just recap.
Let's recap it. Yeah.
Because I don't even know where we are. We're lost. Follow your emotions not emotions. Follow the feeling inside of you.
Yep.
That is happiness in action that creates fulfillment, and pay attention to what that fulfillment does in certain moments. Where do you feel the feeling you want to feel in other areas? An example of that in my life, I trained my cat to play dead.
Yep.
A number of times I had different cats. I've done that in a few weeks and shaping their behavior, and I really enjoyed doing that. And then, is it a coincidence that I love watching progression? When I worked in employment, I watched people get jobs, progression. Yeah. When I worked in finance, I watched people accomplish their goals. Yeah. Whether it was retirement, buying a home, or just saving. And then, of course, in coaching, we watch people progress to the happiest and betterment of their lives. Yeah. That's, those things are transferable. Yep. And that creates fulfillment. I don't think that means I'm living my purpose. I think it's almost selfish.
So if you had to sum it up in a sentence, here's what it sounded like to me. The feeling of purpose you're looking for is really fulfillment. And fulfillment will come from being fully present in the moment to exactly what's happening right now.
And you're like, that's why you're Silent Bob and I'm Jay. Thumbs up ascends. I don't think I had any clarity in 30 minutes in that one. Yeah, that's exactly, I would say that's bang on, man. Yeah. That's bang on. If you want to talk about the exercise that we do for you, because there is putting into action. That's an important part of it, is taking that awareness into that feeling of different things and seeing what kind of jobs allow you to do that. That's an exercise we do as coaches. But beyond that, just know that you don't need to be anything for you to fulfill your purpose. Your purpose was fulfilled the moment you were born and experienced being alive, and just live your life full and with love and compassion and the other things we talk about that create the feeling. And when you put that from the inside out, you'll find your purpose one way or another. I've never had anyone not find what they really want to do as long as they're happy. Notice how then it doesn't matter what you do.
It doesn't. It really doesn't.
That reminds me when I was at I share this story quick to sum it up. It was like, I think we have a little bit of time. I was at the hospital and I saw that I ran into a guy who was going up to see my stepfather. Had a heart attack, and this guy had this, what do you call those things? I want to say smock, but that's not it. It's like the nurse's garb, Anyways, Scrubs. Yeah. You're my New Year's Eve, you're my partner for sure. Yeah. And so he has scrubs on. I'm standing there. He knows what floor was going on. He goes, "Oh, is everyone?" The man just said to me, "Is everything okay with your family?" I said, "Oh, my stepfather had a heart attack. I think he's okay and he's in recovery or whatever." And he said, "I'm sorry to hear that." And I go, "Oh, do you work here at the hospital?" And he said, "Yeah, I have the most important job." And I said, "Oh, you're a surgeon?" He said, "No, I clean the operation rooms because without me, virus would spread." That was before COVID even, so I can't imagine. Yeah. And so, and I just realized, help me realize every job, it doesn't matter what it is, you have a purpose. So to find your purpose is to find yourself. To find yourself is to find your meaning in life. And I think that's the best thing I offer you is you don't need to read a book to do that. You just need to. Yeah, you get to create the meaning in your life. You just need to be present. Yeah. The feeling of who you are without thinking, which we've never even talked about on a podcast. Yeah. We're keeping it till episode 287. 100. Yeah. We'll talk about it soon. Anyways, hope you enjoyed that. Look forward to seeing our next podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, send your friends our way, comment down below if you want to know anything. Questions. We're happy to answer anything during one of these podcasts. Yeah, absolutely. See you next time. Much love.